Hello and good evening to one and all tuned in. Welcome to the sixth episode of After Hours, a podcast show by DSC VIT, where a bunch of community members come together and discuss about tech in a practical and fun manner, and occasionally make controversial statements like HTML is not a programming language. Joining me today are some of the members of our club. We have Chanakya, who is an ML researcher. We have Yajat, who is an app and ML dev. We have Vishesh, who is again an ML dev, and I'm Yuvraj, and I'll be your host for the evening. So, as you all must have already read, our topic for discussion today is machine learning. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. I would like to start off the discussion by asking a question to each one of you, and that is, how did you start with your ML journey, and how's it going so far? So, we'll start with Chanakya.
Yep. So my machine learning journey started like 1.5 years back. So what inspired me was an event conducted by a club in VIT. The event name was Let's Jarvis. So just for the audience to know that this program was a part of Gravitas, which is a techno cultural event conducted by VIT annually, and different clubs uh, organize different programs for students to learn different things. So similarly, there was an event called Let's Jarvis. So at that point of time, I attended that event, and to be honest, I was there just for the certificate. But
Mhm. Right.
but I didn't know that at the end of the day, at the end of that workshop, I would be inspired to get started with machine learning. So I didn't understand
Mhm.
a lot by when I attended that event, but I wanted to know that how exactly the things are functioning. Like you say something, it says something back. So that's what inspired me to get started with. And after that, I did a couple of courses on Udemy and
Right.
Coursera, and after
Mhm.
that, build a few projects, and I can say that the journey is going great till now.
That's great. Interesting enough, even I had attended one of these events in Gravitas, and I remember this was a workshop which was like conducted overnight. So like we had to spend the entire night attending this workshop, and this was over the weekend, so we were kind of really reluctant to attend it because we might as well prefer watching a movie chill in the weekend. But anyway, we ended up going through the entire workshop, and actually what really gave me a confidence boost of sort is that we there was actually a mini hack which was conducted at the end of the workshop, and we actually ended up winning that, and
Whoa.
that really gave me a sense of excitement in terms of exploring more about machine learning and understanding their concepts. And as you mentioned, I also like took up these courses, and we'll also like further discuss during the podcast of how to get started. And I'd like to move on to Yajat now. If you could share your journey and how's it been so far.
Yeah, so my ML journey started when I joined VIT, which was almost a year back now. And
Right.
unlike you guys, my college was online due to the pandemic.
Sad.
Mhm.
And because of that, what happened was I could not meet any of my friends and had very less interaction with them, which gave me a lot of free time. So one day I got to know that Coursera was giving a lot of free courses.
Mhm.
So like a normal, university student, I went to Coursera. I hoarded a bunch of courses on machine learning, deep learning, and
Right.
especially the one by Andrew Ng. And not gonna
Of
lie,
course.
those courses were like really helpful to, get me interested in this field. Then after that, I joined Kaggle and then made a lot
Right.
of notebooks over there, experimented with a bunch of ML libraries, looked at people's work. And yes, I'm here. I'm a Kaggle notebook expert now.
Well, congrats on that first of all. And I mean, yeah, that's a great journey I believe so far you've had, and more laurels to you. And we'll move on to Vishesh now. Vishesh, you could share. your journey and how's it going?
Yeah, so my ML journey started in class 12 with making a simple Telegram chatbot using Dialogflow. So, for the audience who doesn't know what Dialogflow is a natural language understanding platform by Google to make conversational chatbots. And I named it Andy. So, my
Okay.
journey is going quite smooth, and I've come a long way after that. So, after
Right.
joining college, I took a few courses from Coursera in ML, like
Mm-hmm.
Ajay did, and then I started making a lot of Kaggle notebooks, and naturally, I proceeded to projects.
Great, great. We've spoken a little about how our journey has been so far and, how we got started with it. But I'd like to take a step back and discuss a little about, what actually maybe must have inspired us down the line. Because what I want to know is what was your first interaction with something that had, an ML based technology associated with it in some form or other. So I'll go first. I remember back in like seventh grade, I wanted to order an Xbox. So as you do, I logged on to Amazon and searched for an Xbox 360 to be precise. And I searched up multiple, these products which were listed out. And I remember when I came back the next day on the website to finally make the purchase, there were a bunch of things which were already like recommended to me, and they were all like related to what I had searched for, and that was like the Xbox console, and I was shown multiple things related to it, which are like controllers, game CDs. And obviously, at that moment, I didn't really pay much attention to this. Try to understand, okay, why did this happen? But now that I have some sort of knowledge about machine learning, I actually realized that that was an item based machine recommender system, which was implemented by Amazon. And in fact, Amazon was one of the first few companies to recommend this at scale. And so, yeah, that was my first, sort of experience with an ML based tech. So, I would like to know from any one of you if you had a similar experience or a different one.
Yeah, yeah.
Mine,
So my ML
Yeah,
journey,
go on,
yeah,
Vishesh.
yeah. Sorry. So my ML journey, the first product which I ever interacted was Apple's voice assistant Siri. So I was
Oh,
quite
great.
mesmerized with it. It was back in 2012 when iPhones had just launched and they were quite the hype since they
Yeah,
were one of the best smartphones at that point of time. So I didn't
right.
know what was under the hood, and being a kid, very small, I used to play with it and occasionally go like, "What did the fox say?" and get a hilarious response out of it.
Great.
And I was inspired by Jarvis from Iron Man, and I wanted to
Oh,
build
I
it
see.
at some given point of time. So
Wow.
that's
I'm really
the
inspired
first.
about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, nice.
So that was the first interaction I had with any ML based technology.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. How about you, Chanakya? You were, I guess, trying to
Yep,
say something.
yep. So,
Yeah.
uh, my first interaction with machine learning was my first interaction with, let's say, the Google Home and Alexa. So, at that point of time, if you tell Alexa to play this song or do something for me, then it will exactly do that and follow the command. And to be
Hmm.
honest, at that point of time, it was just like jadoo for me because I mean,
Right.
it was something out of the world, right? Being a kid and seeing
Mhm.
all these things functioning just made me
Yeah.
wonder the power of technology at that point of time, even though I did not know how exactly are the things operating. So,
Hmm.
but after that, when I explored ML a bit, and I know how I can imagine how the things are functioning. So I would also like to tell the audience that uh, when you see a real life example of something that is working in front of you, try to imagine that what's happening behind the scenes, because
Right.
you will end up learning a lot when you can see the things from from the programmer's point of view who programmed that particular thing. So
Hmm.
that way your imagination will increase as well as your technical skills.
Yeah, there's some great points you mentioned, and there's something you mentioned. Funny enough, that you called ML as something, as some sort of jadoo. And I would like to elaborate a little on that. And I feel like a lot of people, even now, they feel that ML is some sort of black box magic where you just input some data and you get results of some sort, predictions or like classify the data set into various different types of classes or whatever. And obviously, this gap have knowledge has been closed in the past few years. And but like what this is really interesting, what you mentioned. A lot of people actually think so, and that's obviously not true. It's ML. I believe this might just be a little controversial, but whatever. ML is just glorified maths, in my opinion. There's a lot of great concepts of calculus and linear algebra involved, and of course, we'll also talk about going in depth and learning these ML concepts later through during the podcast, and we'll also like tell you, how to get started with your journey. And that is in fact leading on to our next question, which is what was I would like to know some of the interesting projects you guys have worked on and which used machine learning in some form or other. And it would be great if you could maybe discuss about a project which was inspired by a real life use case. And so we'll start with Chanakya. I guess you could take this up first.
Yep, sure. So before we move on and talk about projects, one thing that I would like to tell the audience is that, like you, Rajan, mentioned, right, many people believe that machine learning is just a black box that takes certain inputs and gives certain predictions. But a true ML engineer is one who actually knows the concept, what's happening behind. Let me give you an example that what will happen if you are not aware of the concepts which are happening, which are applied behind the scenes. So let's say you have trained a model and you got, let's say, 90% accuracy, and
Right.
you want to improve the accuracy from, let's say, 90% to 95%. uh, a
Mm-hmm.
true This journey from 90 to 95 will only be can only be done by a true machine learning engineer who knows what's happening behind the scenes, like
Definitely.
what are the different hyper parameters that you need to set, and how the model will function, like
Right.
why the model is failing, like what are the different wrong predictions which are returned by the model. So
Right.
that's where the true knowledge can help you. And I believe
Yeah.
that projects are also one of the ways that can help you learn these behind the scenes concepts. So I will give you an example where I learned a lot from by building a project. So, and it was inspired by a real life scenario as well. So you must have in the past few months we have given a lot of exams like cats or fads, where we and for those exams we have taken a lot of printouts, right?
Oh,
So,
don't remind me of that, man. Yeah.
yeah. So, um, there were certain times where I had to underline certain important text for in a particular page, and I wanted
Right.
those underlined sentences in the digital format. So,
Right.
let's say I underline two or three sentences on a page, and I would like to, let's say, revise it or uh, have a look again on my phone instead of looking at the
Mm-hmm.
paper. So I searched across the internet. There was nothing like this which was available. So what I did, I built an algorithm which could enable the user, which so a user will upload a photo, and
Mm-hmm.
with certain lines underlined, and after that, the algo will detect the positions of the underlined sentences, and once
Right.
we have the position of those underlined sentences, we will pass it to the OCR, or optical character recognition. So once the character recognition returns the sentences, it will be stored as a note in your phone. So this app is called as DigiNotes, and it will be releasing this week. Do look out for that.
Yeah, that really sounds interesting, man. And I'm sure, in case we still have online exams, which I hope I do, which I hope still continues, by the way. But like, I'm sure people are going to make much use of this. And I think, uh, yeah, Yajat, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah. So like, yeah, Chanakya, you talked about your app DigiNotes, right? So I just wanted to know like how that the underlying text was being taken.
Yep. So let's say you uploaded a photo of a page where certain lines are underlined by you, and so uh, whenever we are dealing with, let's say, image processing, we and particularly with the page where we have to detect certain boxes or let's say certain lines, it's always good to deal with the coordinates of those particular lines, because a page has dimensions, right? Let's say there are 1,000 rows and 1,000 columns which the computer can recognize. So it's very important for you to know that which coordinates, at which coordinates the lines are starting to get underlined, and at which coordinate the lines are finished underlined. So that's what the algo does. It uses OpenCV and certain methods, uh, which is not in the scope of, which we can't talk about right now. That will stretch a lot. So yeah, that's basically how it works. It detects the coordinates of the lines, and then it selects the region of interest and pass it to the OCR.
Right, right.
Wow,
That's
wow,
great.
And yeah,
that's
that yeah,
amazing.
it shows that you've maybe copied a lot of code from Stack Overflow. Good job, man.
Okay,
So I'll
we'll take that as
I'll
a
go on and
compliment.
talk about my project now, something which I built. So I remember back when we were in college. This was in second semester. Obviously, when you're at college, we the entire like our meals, most of the meals were on food messes, obviously. And so I noticed this thing, which our food messes, the mess staff started doing. What they started doing was that they put up a board every day, which listed the amount of food wastage which was there on a given day. They had some sort of scaling parameter, which I don't know how they thought about it, but might be accurate. So what they did was, say for example, on uh, any given day of the week, on the board they had written that okay, today the wastage is 200 kgs, and this could feed like 30 people. So that was basically for us to make us realize that okay, stop wasting food, and like you're potentially like harming other people's lives in terms of not maybe this food could have been like if given to someone else they would have fully eaten it or whatever. So point is I kind of thought to make this utilize this data and somehow apply some sort of machine learning technology. So I actually went up to the mess admin and asked them if they have some sort of data available then about the procurement of food, amount of food they cook, and what is the daily wastage like. And he just handed over to me a very rough and dirty notebook, which now, of course, to work on ML models, you need data in a digitized format, and that was not there. So anyway, that didn't stop me. I created synthetic data with parameters of my own. And long story short, I ended up building a model which would actually predict the ideal amount of food to be cooked on a given day based on, the historical data. So that would include the footfall in the mess on the particular day, basically the number of people who had eaten food on that day. There was another parameter I introduced called mess rating, which would rate the mess and also a menu rating. So, for example, if you have dosa on a particular day, you expect more people to come, and on a day when you have some weird sabji, you expect people to just go to ground floor akka and get a packet of cup noodles. So, so basically, yeah. So I ended up building this model, and yeah. So this was one project, which I was working on, and now I'm trying to revamp it. So yeah, this was something I worked on. So, any of you guys want to talk about any other project you built?
Yeah, Yuvraj, that's quite a noble cause which you worked for, and it's really a commendable job. So
Thanks, thanks.
I recently worked on a project called VIT, which uses an image processing solution to find slots from timetables. This
Right.
was primarily because of the reason that we have our classes online, and since we tend to sleep late at night, and what happens is we are really sleepy in the morning and we tend to miss classes. And what specifically happens is I usually miss those 8 a.m. classes
Right.
because since no one's there to wake me up at 8 and say, oh, you have a class, go and attend your classes. So
Mhm.
due to this reason and this cause, I recently worked on this project called VIT,
Great.
which finds slots and reminds you for classes. So I
Wow.
primarily developed the backend and as well as
Mhm.
the machine learning model. And what it does is it basically pings you for an upcoming class on the app
Mhm.
and reminds you so that you never miss any of those classes, along with the time slot, the slot name, the slot code, as well as uh, where the slot is. So in case even if it happens offline, so let's say hopefully we go to the campus in about 6 months. So it'll also return you this class number so that you never miss classes on campus as well.
Mhm.
So this is one of the projects I recently worked, which had a real life use case.
That's really impressive, man, and I'm sure more than half of our college is definitely going to make use of this. So one thing I want to know that how did you ended up, like, so you're telling me you, if I'm just correct me if I'm wrong. So like you're scanning the timetable, and so how just explain to me how that process is working. How are you like getting the data out of the timetable?
Yeah, yeah. So what? So if you've seen VIT's timetable, it is a table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm asking the user is to input the screenshot of the timetable, and your
Right.
screenshot has two kinds of slots: those yellow slots which are empty, and those green slots which you have the class. So what
Correct.
I'm
Correct.
doing is I'm taking an image and I'm
Mm-hmm.
drawing grids on it, and I'm
Okay.
segregating those in boxes. So I detect if the background of the box is green or not. If it is green, then
Mm-hmm.
I tend to convert it into a grayscale image because grayscale gives the best results.
Right.
And what I'm doing is I'm passing that text through an OCR, and it is returning me the text which I can copy and then I format it and return it to the backend properly formatted to the app, and the app sends a notification to you whenever the time is.
Got it, got it. Great, man. That's great. And we've been talking about our projects for a bit now, and that actually leads to our next point of discussion as well. Because personally, what I believe is ML skills aside, in order to actually, so there's a huge difference between making your ML model in a Jupyter notebook and actually making an app out of your ML model. Okay. So, I mean, because like, for example, if you build, say, I'll take a very simple example. Say you want to predict the price of a car. So you'll have, multiple parameters like, say, the brand, the mileage it offers, if it's an electric car, uses petrol, diesel, etc., etc. Now you can do all the pre-processing, the training, validation, everything on a Jupyter notebook. But ultimately, for example, if you want to show it to someone, I think you can't just show the Jupyter notebook to the people, right? It's obviously it will be much more better if you could make a website of sorts. Maybe, put up a form so that users can actually interact with your model. And so, what our next point of discussion is basically, what other tech stacks one should, pick up to complement your ML skills and take your, developer journey to the next level. So, some of the frameworks which I personally use and I would recommend is I would firstly like to mention Fast API. Is basically a Python framework, and it's very easy to learn. And as the name suggests, it's fast and it's used to build APIs. So it's as easy as that. And so basically, what you can do is, you know, convert your ML models into an API so that you can integrate it with any sort of front end, whatever app, and present some sort of front end to the user, and so that they can actually interact with your backend. And I wanted to know some of your views from you guys as well, if you agree or you have some other framework to recommend, maybe.
Yeah, so another thing that one can explore is TF Lite. So TF Lite is basically a lightweight solution that one can use to deploy ML models on low-end devices and like on devices which have to run those ML models offline. And yeah, it can not only, in fact, run on mobile phones, it can even run on devices like a Raspberry Pi or a small IoT device, right?
Right.
And it's very useful in applications where there is no constant internet connection,
Mhm.
and it makes it like lowers, like normally in TensorFlow when you make one model, the models
Right.
are comparatively big, and it's difficult to run on systems without proper GPU. So
Mhm.
what AFLite does is it reduces the size of the model so that it's, as the name suggests, it makes it lighter so that it can run on low-end devices also.
Right.
Yep, that's a very good point that you just made. How you can deploy your ML models to serve on edge. One other thing which I would also like to talk about is the importance of notebooks. Like, whenever you are getting started with your journey, let's say for the first 6 months or 1 year, your aim should not be directly building, let's say, a cool website or an app which can use the power of ML. Your basic aim should be to clear your concepts, and that can only be done when you use notebooks like Jupyter notebooks or Collab. Because the thing is,
Right.
these notebooks acts as a playground where you can experiment with certain things. Like, if you
Mhm.
whether you want to use, let's say, XGB boost, or whether you want to use logistic regression. I mean, because these things can't be done on edge, right? You need, before deploying, you have to be sure that, okay, this model will be working the best and this will not. So never ignore the importance of notebooks, because even in industry, even at industries when they have to deploy a model, they usually make use of notebooks which are available on local machine, let's say Jupyter, or on cloud, or on cloud, for example, AWS SageMaker or Collab. So
Right. Right.
my point of advice would be to never miss the importance of notebooks.
Okay. Definitely, Chanakya, I do agree with this point. Even till date, when I'm working with projects, first I try out and test everything using a notebook. Notebooks are irreplaceable. But since we were talking about other frameworks as well, so what I feel is another framework that one should know for deploying models after you've done with everything is Flask. So Flask is written in Python, and it is a microweb framework for serving a front end as well as creating REST APIs out of your model, so that you can basically serve an overall package to the user, properly formatted, and it becomes really easy to use. If for a person who doesn't know coding, or someone who is not into using those technologies, and has to is basically more for
Yeah.
getting
Yeah,
the
definitely. I mean,
results.
I think Flask is one of the first frameworks I think people should actually start building. Even for like web development as well. Flask, even though it's a micro framework, but it actually does a great job at handling, building, especially machine learning models, because uh, it's there's not a lot of complex user features you're providing. It's just that you want your users to interact with your model, and Flask does a really great job at doing just that. And I was just wondering about what Chanakya had said, and he's put it very rightly. The notebook is like a playground for you, and definitely you can't completely ignore them. And like it has notebooks have obviously some sort of importance associated with them, and so all the notebooks, basically the model building and everything is obviously done in the notebook itself. And once you are ready with your models, so it's really advised if you could, go one step ahead and build a full application out of it. That would really like give you a confidence boost as well. And also, if you're able to share your projects with the people, and that really feels great, because obviously, like I mentioned before, you if you like just go and show your notebook to just any other person who has no experience with ML or doesn't do ML development, they might not, maybe they'll get the idea of it, but they might not be like they might not get the intuition of its application per se. And so that is why we recommend to learn other tech stacks along with your ML skills as well. And we've been talking about a lot of ML and how we have used ML and our journeys and whatsoever. But one thing which we have, I think, not talked a little about is some of the roadblocks which we have faced. Some of our basically big L's we have received, and because I personally believe ML has the longest learning curve in all the tech stacks, and at multiple times you face like giving up. You want to give up, and it's really overwhelming at times because even if you try to understand the underlying concepts, you don't grasp them at first go in it, obviously, because like there are complex mathematical concepts involved behind the simplest of algorithms as well, and so that can get overwhelming at times. So what I want, the next question which I want to take up is basically how did you guys handle these challenges and what did you do to overcome these situations? So any one of you can like start with this.
Yep. So, as you had said that we face roadblocks every, like it, the ML journey is not complete without facing roadblocks in the journey. One thing is
Right.
that what I believe is the learning curve for ML is much more than let's say for as compared to other technologies. I'm not saying that the other technologies are very easy to learn, but if we compare the learning curve, like the amount of time to be spent learning a particular concept, that is much more, and I think you guys would also agree with me on that. And
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and another thing which, and to be honest, one thing which we face is imposter syndrome, and I still face that every day, or because there are different things that can give you imposter syndrome, right? One is, let's say we go on LinkedIn and see some researcher making a publishing a research paper, or let's say making a cool project,
Yeah, that's the number one rule. You don't go on LinkedIn throughout your yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely agreed. You
yeah.
should never go on like that.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, so when and let's say if we go to Kaggle and see, okay, this researcher had made this notebook which involves very difficult concept that you won't grasp it. Uh, the first
Hmm.
thing is you should basically expose yourself to those notebooks, or let's say projects, because and
Right.
we also need to understand that those researchers, or let's say those people who have achieved a certain level by spending a lot of time doing these things. Let's take the example of a person who has done MS or PhD. He or she must have spent at least 10 years exploring this field, and
Right.
it's quite obvious that the things which they can do, a person who is just getting started, or let's say have spent 2 years, won't be able to do that. So that's the thing with ML. You have to keep on learning from others and not get intimidated by their projects or notebooks, because we have to respect the fact that they have put up that much effort as well as time to learn those concepts, and you should be happy that you are able to get access to those concepts, like what they have researched or what code they have used. So it's always good to have a mindset of learning and not having a mindset of competing with others.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And like as you mentioned, the ML community is first of all huge and they're very helpful people. And almost anything, any sort of roadblock you face or any issue or any problem, I mean, you're just one search, Google search away. And because on 99.9% of the times, if you like search for any issue or problem or any conceptual clarity if you want to gain, you're definitely going to find some or the other resource which will help you uh, overcome those challenges. And as Chanakya said, you just need to keep a mind. You need to keep a mindset of like learning. You just need to be eager to learn, and that is going to get you through. Of course, at times they're bound to get overwhelming because as we mentioned, ML is not the one of the it's not definitely not the easiest skill or tech domain to pick up, but what will keep you going, trust me, this worked for me, is the sheer amount of application this field has. And if you're passionate about the field, you will try your level best, of course, to overcome these challenges. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of resources which will also help you, and we'll also talk about those resources to kickstart your journey in a bit. And so, yeah, I want to talk to maybe Vishesh and Yajat, you guys also, if you could share your views on the roadblocks you faced and how did you
Yeah, yeah,
manage to overcome. Yeah.
yeah. So, imposter syndrome is one of the biggest challenges I faced till date. There was a time where I didn't know what basic machine learning techniques were, and I didn't know what was going under the black box, like we just
Right.
mentioned before. So I didn't
Yeah.
know what was the difference between linear regression and logistic regression.
Yeah, that happens to the best of us. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't know what was going on, and I felt like I didn't know anything at all. Since ML is not a development intensive field, but more of a research intensive field. So you need to grasp your concept and make those strong first before you can actually start developing real life applications or even make a breakthrough in this field. People with PhDs, like you just mentioned, take about 15 to 20 years and have dedicated their lives to the field to be where they are today. And this is primarily due to the steepest learning this field has. So, what my personal experience has been to overcome this imposter syndrome is when I feel intimidated by something, what I do is I tend to expose myself to it. So I didn't know what linear regression and logistic regression were. I went to Google, and since Google has answers for about every single thing in this world, so I went right from what their basic definitions were to how they were working, the mathematics involved behind them, and that's how I overcame that. And trust me, you should know the theory before you actually apply it. And I set a stronghold on my theory before I actually put those things to use. And that's how I've overcome my imposter syndrome and all the roadblocks I faced till date.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think we have also talked a little about this earlier as well. Getting started is really easy, but like maintaining your learning curve and actually keeping up to date with the newest frameworks or tech in ML is the real challenge. And you can easily build these projects like the starter project, which most people start with is the I think the house prediction project where you need to predict the cost of the house based on the location, plot size, and other parameters. And you can just follow along with the code and implement it, and you will be happy. But like as Vishesh said, if you're not actually understanding, okay, how if we write say model.fit, so what is happening behind the scenes, if you're not actually understanding that, then it's going to get really tricky and dangerous for you down the line, because understanding these concepts are really crucial in order to get a complete conceptual clarity of what's happening behind the scenes. And yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, I would also like to add something. So, one of my roadblocks was the amount of theory in ML. So, like the Andrew NG course, like he
Yeah,
has a very, very sweet voice, right? So, like, usually after watching his course for like hours and hours, you
you
will
tend to
tend to
feel
like,
sleepy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it
exactly,
happens with
exactly.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I found was to like, not only do theory, but also apply that theory in ML notebooks. So what I did was
Right.
I went to our Kaggle and started with some basic data sets and started making some models over there. And whenever I got stuck over there, I referred to other people's notebooks and I learned a lot from them too.
Right. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
a great like method to go about it. Go about getting overcoming your roadblocks. And Kaggle, as you mentioned, it's a great resource. And I mean, I think Kaggle is one of the first few resources which everyone is recommended to get started with, and it's this great repository of data sets and notebooks. And I'm sure Chanakya and who is actually a Kaggle notebooks master, can tell us a little more about Kaggle and what are some of the resources we can recommend our viewers who want to kickstart their journey in ML.
Yep, sure. So Kaggle is a platform, as you just mentioned, that there are a lot of data sets and notebooks available where you can learn and apply your ML concepts. So um, one thing with Kaggle is that a lot of people get intimidated that, okay, the code is tough, or let's say this person has this particular rank, he is among the top 200 or among the top 300. So, the one thing, your sole motive of doing Kaggle should be to learn at the end of the day, because the amount of learning which you can get by going through other people's notebook will, you won't get that by going through different courses, because courses
Definitely.
courses just teach you, let's say, okay, linear regression works like this, logistic regression works like this, and this is how you fit it, and this is how you apply the code. But the thing is that there, this is the model dot fit is not the only thing which happens in ML. You need to know how to pre-process that data. You need to
Yes.
know how to evaluate your model. So those things can be learned quite well through Kaggle. And just to share some resources with the viewer, like the basic data sets, there are pretty awesome data sets out there, like Titanic data set to get started with, as well as the
Right.
house prediction one, which you, I think you had also mentioned earlier. And
Mm-hmm.
in order to learn, for example, oversampling or undersampling, there are data sets for credit card fraud prediction, etc., etc. And I have wrote a blog which can help you to kickstart your journey, and the link has been shared in the chats to do go through it.
Yeah, definitely go check that out. And so apart from, of course, Kaggle, I would definitely recommend, as you guys have already mentioned, the Andrew course. So he's kind of, I think, regarded as one of the pioneers of developing ML courses, and almost everyone who gets into this field ends up watching some or the other video from him. And what I'll recommend is that obviously you can't go through the entirety of his course in one go. Definitely, that's not going to happen unless you're superhuman or something. Because first of all, I mean, even though this might sound silly, that you might fall asleep because his voice is like angelic and it's very sweet actually. But the thing is that it's very theory heavy, and as a beginner, you like to see results in front of you, and you like to implement projects which can show people. So basically, a good mixture of projects and theory is what I would recommend. So, for example, if you are implementing a regression model where you want to predict a continuous variable, say, for example, you want to predict, as you mentioned, the house, the price of a house. So you want to utilize algorithms such as linear regression. Now, first, I would recommend that go and first understand how is linear regression working. So Andrew, uh, you just search up one of his videos, or even like if the course you've taken, you learn about the algorithm, how it's working, go through the math, then actually go on with the coded implementation. And trust me, that is really going to help you, and in fact also give you a confidence boost, because you are actually going to understand, okay, what is actually happening. And as we mentioned multiple times during the podcast, you will actually stop believing that ML is some sort of black box magic, and it's really some amazing sets of mathematical applications. And so, yeah, that is some of the recommendations from my side, and whatever like I have experienced throughout
Also,
my. Yeah, go on. My
yeah,
bad.
yeah, also adding to you guys, what I feel is before even jumping to making models, you need to know what do you have to do with your data exactly. Many a times you're not served the data properly. You have to clean it. Then you have to understand. So data visualization is quite important. And to our
Mhm.
viewers tuned in, we Kaggle has a really good data set called the FIFA data set. So you can do exploratory data analysis, or what we call as EDA on it. to
Right.
understand how data is being visualized and what do you exactly have to do with the data to
Mm-hmm.
uh, to make predictions from model. And what from my personal experience, I feel you should really know about your data before you can jump to making models.
Right. All right. I think those are some great points mentioned by all you guys, and I hope that the users tuned in gained some sort of insight and learn from maybe our mistakes or whatever we are suggesting. These are all from personal experiences or whatever we have experienced. We are still students and learning, still learning, and I hope these uh, experiences we've shared with you help you during your journey. Moving on, I would like to discuss about some of the future applications of machine learning and what, according to you, are some of the emerging tech which utilizes ML. So, if anyone, if you could like maybe discuss about.
Yeah, so go on, Vishesh.
No, no, yeah, just continue.
Yeah, yeah, go on.
Okay, and so I feel like a lot of good stuff can happen with ML. Like we know, like nowadays we see ML integrated everywhere. So, but
Right.
what I think one of the most important thing that we have as a humanity have to focus
Mm-hmm.
is making AI responsible.
Right.
One way to visualize is our sci-fi movies. If we don't make it responsible, it might end up with AI overtaking us. So,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I don't mean it that way. What I mean is making it responsible by removing bias from the models. Like sometimes what happens is in a model trained for loan application can tend to be biased towards a certain group of people because of the
Mm-hmm.
historical data. And then in terms of computational photography, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
like these days many people are facing this issue ki, the photographs of people of color is not being taken properly by the camera. So
Yeah.
like we have to work on these things and make AI more responsible and fair.
Yeah, I think this was even discussed in one of Google's recent events as well, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yes, yes, yes. Over there they talked about how they have started collecting more data of people of color, so that
Mm-hmm.
their computational photography becomes even better, and people of color are represented correctly in their
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah, definitely. I think one say field of machine learning which I would like to talk about is tiny ML. So tiny ML is basically it's a first of all it's a fast growing field right now, and its applications basically including applying machine learning algorithms and softwares on extremely low power devices and small sensors. Basically, it's I think it's a mixture of IoT and ML, if I may say. And I believe one of the great applications of this, if I will give you an example, was that some students, I believe, what they did was they set up these sensors in a forest in some, I guess, and what those sensors had, and I think Arduino chip on it, which had an inbuilt machine learning model, which using the the parameters which it recorded from the atmosphere throughout the day, it actually made predictions whether the forest is going to catch a fire. So basically, it made predictions on forest fires in that particular location based off whatever data it's collected. And I believe TinyML has a huge future, and it has great applications because IoT is of course it's in itself has great applications, and we is small sensors and devices being used to help impact society. So yeah, this is something I believe which is going to be some of the future and interesting applications of machine learning.
Yeah, adding on to Yajut's point, like let's say as Yajut had mentioned that we have to practice responsible AI. One example which I can share with you guys is uh, in the medical field. So let's say you have collected the data of patients and you want to predict whether the patient will have diabetes or not, or let's say whether the image of the lungs can suggest cancer or not. So in those
Mm-hmm.
cases, I have seen a lot of cases where patients just sign up for the form and they are not really sure what's exactly in that form, because uh, it might be the case where you are permitting the hospital to use your data in any future research purposes. So you have to take care of that as well, because see, without data, AI is not like 50% or 60% of the AI models won't work where there is a lack of data and all those cases.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's so I completely agree to the point that we have to practice responsible AI, and the user should not compromise with their privacy for the sake of AI or ML.
Yeah. Those are definitely some great points you mentioned.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Adding on
totally
to it,
agree. Yeah, go on, Vishesh.
sorry. Adding onto it, I wanted to add
Mm-hmm.
like AI has been used quite a lot in the biotech field.
Right.
So it has been used in quite life-saving operations, and maybe in the near future, simple operations are performed by machine learning itself. So using machine learning, so using artificial intelligence. And in addition to this, we have seen quite a few examples in the recent past that machine learning has saved lives of individuals. A typical example of that is Apple Watch. So if you remember, it was quite recently in the news that a person was about to suffer for an heart attack, and the
Yeah, yeah, actually, I
Apple
read
Watch
about this. Yeah.
yeah,
Notified, yeah. The heart rate, I think, dropping, something like that, right?
heart rate dropping, and it called an ambulance as well as notified the family members, and that's
Yeah.
how life was saved in the golden hour. So
Yep.
yeah, ML has some life saving opportunities in the near future.
Right, definitely. All right, we are almost coming to an end of this episode. And we would now actually like to share some resources with you guys, which would definitely help you kickstart your journey in machine learning. And so we'll put it on the YouTube live chat. And if you guys again, want to pitch in some resources which you found helpful to you, I think we've already mentioned Kaggle and some of the courses, but like if you have something in mind as well, you could quickly share it.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing. People, I would suggest the viewers to check out blogging sites like Towards Data Science and Analytics Vidya too. It has like some great,
Mhm.
articles about various things in ML. And whenever you
Yep.
get stuck on anything in ML and or don't understand something, you can always just go to their site and you will find something or the other related to it.
Yep. All right. Uh, any other recommendations, or I think we'll move on to the Q&A session now. So if you guys have any questions from each one of us, you could just put it up in the chat, and we'll try to answer it to the best of our knowledge and capabilities.
Yeah, so I think Nikita had asked one question before, like towards the starting of the session. So her
Yeah.
question was, while doing the entry NG course, she got bored sometimes, just like us, as it was
Oh
very
yeah.
theoretical, and so she wanted to know some tips on how to maintain consistency and any other alternate courses that are more interesting. So one thing what I would like to suggest is don't get worried about going through finishing the Andrew NG course on one go. As Yuvraj had mentioned once that you can't finish it on one go and you have to come back again and again to revise it. So what I would suggest is pick up some
Yep.
let's say uh, code along courses where you understand the concept from Andrew's course. Let's say he is teaching linear regression, and the code along course can teach you how to implement it in Python. So this will basically complement each other, and you won't get bored because you will be able to see the results right in front of your screen. And coming to the few other courses that are good, one I would recommend the machine learning A to Z course on Udemy. That's pretty good. They have covered a lot of things, and you can, in order to judge a course, you have to do always see the syllabus and what's the popularity of the instructor who is teaching you. So based on that, and do also go through the reviews, whether it's beginner friendly or whether it's for advanced level people. So that is all those points
Yeah.
you can go through, and and you can pick up any course which you find good.
Yeah, that's definitely some important things you mentioned, because a lot of people, they just, as you know, Yajat also mentioned earlier, that we just keep hoarding courses, and people, we see, okay, it's a free course, or like the prices have dropped, we just enroll in it and never end up actually completing it. And so basically, whenever you are actually enrolling for a course, make sure that it's actually useful to you, and you actually end up, at least, like, if not 100%, at least go through the major chunk of the course, so that you get some benefit, of course, from it. And if you have any other questions, we'll, I guess, wait for another 2 minutes. And
Yeah, so while we are waiting for the questions, I would like to tell about one of my projects.
right.
So it's related to natural language processing. So for those
Okay.
of you who don't know what natural language processing is, it's basically the ability of an ML model to understand and analyze natural language, which is spoken by us humans. So what the project was, it was an app called Smart Bookmark. As the name suggests, in this app you can bookmark websites and save them for later. Now you would think,
Right.
what's so smart about it, right? Like even your browser can do it. So what the smart part was, that there was an NLP model which classified those websites into various different categories, like entertainment, news, science and technology, etc. So that's what, like, we say, classified them and stored them, and then you can later on access it from any of your devices.
Right. So, how are you, and like, how do you like end up classifying these pages? Like, how do you parse to the web page, or like, can you explain me how do you do that?
Right. So what I did was, first I got the title of the website using a scraping library in Python called Beautiful Soup. So after getting that title, I put it in an NLP model,
Right.
which did some processing and gave me the like one of the categories which I mentioned before.
Got it. Got it. Got it. That's good. That's a great project, man, and good use of NLP, I must say.
Amazing project.
Yeah. All right, guys. So with that, we come to an end of the sixth episode of After Us. We hope this discussion gave you some great insights, and we hope that you've learned and taken back something. And yeah, so with that, we come to an end, and we'll see you in the next episode of After Us. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, guys.